Hello and good morning to all joining us via Zoom and our Facebook live stream. Welcome to the Center for Enlightenment's exploration of the spiritual teachings, Jewels from Jane Elizabeth. Each Sunday will be a free-flowing adventure with the teachings by Jane Elizabeth Hart, facilitated by certified Center for Enlightenment teachers. We will be working from the self-study lessons found on our website at cfenlightenment.org. Today we begin with the next self-study lesson titled Observer Self. Our topic, what is the observer self? Greg Brett will be the facilitator for this lesson. He's a certified teacher for the Center for Enlightenment and longtime student of Jane Hart, studying with her for over 30 years. Jane is the author of Spiritual Power Tools, Support for Your Soul, master teacher and founder of the Center for Enlightenment. Today's course will be live streamed via Facebook. A recording will be sent out with the weekly reflection so you can access it anytime. For those new to this format, your chat icon is located at the bottom of your screen. Just click to view. If you have any technical questions, please reach out to the host or co-host via the chat room. In addition to the Sunday courses, there will be a question and answer discussion on Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. A link for these sessions will also be posted in the chat room. If you're in need of prayer support, please contact us at cfenlightenment.org or just type centerforenlightenment.com. We are active on Facebook and Twitter. Come check us out, share your thoughts, reflections, and experiences. It would also be a great support to like the postings that resonate with you. We also invite you to visit our website at cfenlightenment.org. There you will find additional self-study lessons, talks, videos, or you can search for specific topics to support your expansion in consciousness. So let's just sit back, take a deep breath as we move into the silence. We begin today's journey with a prescription for spiritual alignment.
Good morning and welcome. Let's take this prescription for spiritual alignment into our hearts. As we get quiet, we know that we are aligned with the presence of God within. We are protected by God's love, wisdom, knowledge, and grace. The God consciousness within helps us discover more about who we are. Thank you, God, for the gift of spiritual intuition. Thank you, God, for aligning our conscious, subconscious, and superconscious minds. And we are in the now moment, observing ourselves in being. Thank you, God. Amen. Well, we're going to talk about the observer self, which is an important tool in our spiritual toolbox. And this observer self, Jane defines as that part of us that is the spiritual muscle of our higher self. It's that exercising of the muscle of observation that opens us up to a new way of looking at ourselves, at other people, at our situations in our life, and at our universe, God, the infinite. What you find out is that your behaviors, your thought forms, your emotions are usually experienced unconsciously. But the observer self is bringing that unconscious activity, thought, feeling, and bringing it into the conscious awareness. When you activate this observer self, what you're doing is getting in touch with what Jane calls the roadmap to freedom. Because the more conscious you become, the more you're able to move forward in your spiritual progress. One thing that you'll notice when you're doing your observer self work is that you have a lot of negative thoughts. Negative thoughts are just a part of your day. And it's very important every day to commit to observing your thoughts. When you wake up in the morning, put your observer self into your spiritual backpack. Before you get out of bed, say, I am in my observer self, and ask for some help, some support from your higher self, from your infinite self. Give me some support today in staying in my observer self and seeing what is mine to see. And we can do little things, little exercises to help us stay in our observer selves. One is that you can set your alarm for every hour or so, every 30 minutes, and just ask yourself when it goes off, what am I feeling right now? What am I thinking? I mean, how often do we actually self reflect during the day and find out what's really going on with us internally? Another thing you can do is when you're driving, just decide that every time you hit a stoplight, you're going to ask yourself, what's going on with me right now? What are my feelings? What are my thoughts? These are really ways of training a new system of operating, a new operating system in your everyday life. And whenever you notice a negative thought, you acknowledge it. You don't judge yourself. You don't beat yourself up, but make a conscious effort to change it, to decide that even though you experience these negative thought forms, little by little, you can experience a change in your thinking. And that change comes gradually. And it becomes more and more automatic for you to be aware of your thinking and to change and acknowledge a pattern of thinking that you want to investigate further. And then you can take it a step further if you want to, and these kinds of negative thoughts. You can come home and journal it out, find out what's going on with yourself. The analogy that Jane often uses is of being an actor in a play. That ego, that personality self, is an actor in a play, and you, the director, the observer self, observe and direct what's going on in the play more and more. When you do this, it gives you a new perspective of yourself. You start to see your world differently, and it actually detaches you from the drama of life. A wonderful example of this I saw many, many years ago. I saw an interview with Oprah Winfrey, and she talked about developing her observer self when she was sued for slandering cows in Amarillo, Texas. She apparently had done some kind of TV show back in the 1990s in which she had talked about mad cow disease. And the Cattlemen's Association in the state of Texas decided that they would sue her for slandering the cows. And she was very upset by it. And she called her good spiritual friend, Maya Angelou, who's was a very advanced spiritual person as well as a poet. And she complained to her about this, how unfair it was and how terrible it was and what they were saying about her and all these things. And Maya Angelou told her to experience this from her observer self. What she said to her was, you are not in that, Oprah. And Oprah said, but I am. They're accusing me of this. I have to go to court. I'm going to spend 6 weeks in Amarillo, Texas. And all these things are going on. And Maya Angelou took a breath and said, you are not in that. And shared with her that the you who is not in the drama, in the actor role in life, that you is your observer self. And it's the real you. It's the higher self. It's what we call the Christ in you, or the Buddha nature, or Atman, or the infinite self. And it is that aspect of your being that is not in it. I mean, as they say in Poland, it's not my circus, not my monkeys. This is not my drama, but I am the observer of the drama. And as you stand back and you start to observe yourself, you find that you can detach, you can disengage, you can disentangle from the drama of life. One time, the drama of life was whipping around me. And as a friend of mine once said, when it whips around me, I let it whip. And the words came to me: detach, disengage, disentangle, and become more impersonal, even indifferent. Not that you don't care, but you're not in that. Every day, you're given an opportunity to see where your consciousness is really at. The biggest challenge that any of us experience every day is what's called emotional attachment. And life goes through changes every day. You have what you think are unwanted inputs. People cut you off, people do things to you. I had a situation just this morning. I went into the eye clinic and they had me sign something for a procedure that I would have to pay for that I really didn't need. And my first reaction was, outrage, self-righteousness. How dare they? And then I got into my observer self, maybe because I was going to teach this lesson today. I think I'm teaching it because of you, but I'm teaching it because of me. And as I went into my observer self, and I realized that that self-righteousness was not serving me at all, and that I didn't have to go along with it, whatever was going on, but I didn't have to be in it. You can have things in your life that seem big and dramatic, like a change in your employment or your relationships or a loved one who passes on. There are emotional disturbances or illnesses. These are big things, but also you get these gifts every day of little things like I experienced today that show you where your buttons are being pushed. The experience, it came to me one time, it's like I have these parts of my subconscious that are like Velcro, and they get attached to things, and I get stuck to all kinds of things, and life becomes very difficult to navigate. But by using my observer self, I can convert the Velcro into Teflon, and these things can just flow right off of me. But first, I have to see where the Velcro is. Recently, I had an incident where I showed up early at a restaurant and they were upset about it, and I took it personally. And it showed me where I had in my personality self, in my subconscious, an attachment to what people thought, as opposed to just handling a situation. And what I found, and what you'll find, is that as you follow the thread of your feelings and your thinking, using your observer self, it leads to hidden gold. It leads to what Jane calls Christmas presents. Now, what's a Christmas present? She defines a Christmas present as something that comes every day. She says, every day I find at least one Christmas present. It's wrapped there under the tree of my day, and I get to open it up and find out what's in it. And it's a hidden gift. Now, it usually comes disguised as something that I don't like, something that some Velcro situation, something that makes me feel bad, or I have a judgment about, or I have an emotional reaction, some situation where I get my buttons pushed. But those Christmas presents are actually there to help you to expand your consciousness and to grow into the potential of all that you truly are. But the only way to grow out of the limited self into your unlimited self is to find out where the limitations are and let them go. You'll find that these Christmas presents will lead you to memories about situations in your life that were similar, what a friend of mine once called an earlier similar, where you really have something to forgive. I wondered why I was so upset about this. And then I found out as I did my journaling, as I looked within myself, that there was something in my childhood that it reminded me of. I've even had, and many of us have had, experiences where the past lives come up and you are aware of where this really came from. Why am I being so upset about this? I wasn't upset about something yesterday that seemed to be a lot bigger. And yet this little tiny thing is bugging me. And the reason why is because there's something to forgive. There's some disappointment or difficulty to let go of. There's something that was a hope or a dream that perhaps didn't happen in the past. One of the best ways to process using your observer self is the 5 journaling questions in the Spiritual Power Tool book. And in this chapter on the journaling, you'll find that there are 5 questions that you can just journal out, just write out your answers to the questions. The first question is, what am I feeling right now? The second question is, what am I thinking? What's going on that's causing me to feel this way? The third one is, how does this remind me of something in the past? How's this a pattern for me? The fourth question is, what is my soul showing or telling me right now? And the fifth is, if my soul were in charge and not my ego, how would I handle things differently? And when I followed the thread of my feelings and I did my journaling about these situations that I've been talking about, I found out that there was hidden gold. There were things in my subconscious that I could let go of, just becoming aware of it and changing my thinking. Doing this observer self work is your greatest opportunity each day for spiritual growth. You know, many of us got onto the spiritual path thinking that we'd sit cross-legged or have these bliss experiences or go off onto a mountain somewhere in the Himalayas. I don't know. I don't know what your idea was of the spiritual path, but I can tell you that my idea was certainly not getting my buttons pushed by going into a restaurant or a medical clinic and having them do something I didn't like. How's that spiritual? Why, those people should do what I want them to do. And then, as I started to work with these spiritual power tools, I began to realize that every one of these experiences that I don't like are actually my greatest opportunities for spiritual progress each day. Emotional growth comes, spiritual growth comes. And rather than running away from these situations, we can embrace them. I've read about great spiritual masters who have spiritual communities or ashrams, and they actually bring people in to push the buttons of the other people. I remember reading about this one guy who had a spiritual community, and there's this one character who was just behaving terribly. He wouldn't do his chores. He was terrible and difficult with everybody, and they finally got him to leave. And the master in charge of the spiritual community went to the guy, paid him a large sum of money to come back because he knew that his students needed to get their buttons pushed in order to grow. It wasn't about feeling comfortable all the time. Instigating these things sometimes is your spiritual higher self, nudging this conflict into the open. And I heard Jane say once in a lesson, you may have heard it too on a video. She says, I hope when you get a job that it includes getting all of your buttons pushed. And she shared about the time that she was working at IBM and she had a boss who was hell on wheels and everybody was afraid of her and everybody hated her. And Jane was in the boat with him until she realized it was her opportunity for growth. And so she did her spiritual work. She did her journaling. And I talked about those 5 journaling questions. And she began to just accept this person and love this person. And when this person retired and they had a retirement party, and believe me, everybody was very excited and happy about it, this woman followed Jane into the women's room and broke down in tears and told Jane that Jane was the only person who had ever loved her. Can you imagine that? That here was her opportunity to love somebody who acted like this out of the hurts and the pain in her own soul. And what a lesson this was for her. I remember once hearing a major speaker talk about a time when somebody came up to him and wanted 3 hours of his time and he had to catch a plane and he couldn't do it. And the person just unloaded on him. So he was pretended like he was fine because everybody was watching him, but he went back to his hotel room and wrote down all the judgments and all the anger that he felt towards this man, and then showed all the judgments to his wife and said, do any of these things remind you of me? And his wife read them all and said, all of them. And he realized that the button was being pushed within him because this guy was exhibiting the behaviors and the consciousness that he actually had in his own subconscious mind. And as he forgave one by one these different attitudes that he had that were limited in his ego, he found he could let this other guy off the hook. He wasn't doing anything to him. I mean, there was no harm, no foul. And he was able to convert that Velcro into Teflon. So there's a new way of looking at life, a new way of thinking, a new way of being, and allowing life to support you rather than fighting with life and struggling with life and making everything a personal problem, taking things personally. And this is really what the observer self helps us with, not taking things personally, not getting into the personality self, the ego self that wants to get in there, feel like a victim, want to fight with people or repress our feelings and feel hurt. And when you're on your journey, your spiritual journey, your consciousness, your higher self will come in to shake loose all of your old false beliefs, all your false beliefs about yourself, all the things you've got to forgive about other people, and even about what you hold sacred, all the things you hold about spirituality and God. I know that I came into this spiritual path thinking that I knew it all, and my spiritual ego had to be overcome and transcended. My understanding of God was, although I thought it was very advanced, was very limited. I was very dogmatic. And I still have that tendency. And I get to see it when I see the Velcro there. Very rigid, very self justifying and self righteous. And when I first began to see these things, it was a rude awakening. I did not like it. But what I got to see was that this was just the activity of the evolution of my soul, bringing up the things that I needed to kick off my feet, to just kick that dust off and let it go. And I realized that this energy and life of God in me was striving to push me forward. And that higher self in you is striving to push you forward. And sometimes it turns your world upside down. Jane says in the video we're going to watch at the end that sometimes, many times, her world turned upside down. And when it rocked, she let it rock. And when it reconfigured in a form that was much better and more in alignment with her spirituality, in a more dynamic configuration. I came into the spiritual path looking for safety for my ego, security for my personality, comfortableness. But I remember reading Helen Keller, who said, life is either a grand adventure or it's nothing. And Jane says in the video that her life's been tipped over so many times, but it was necessary because it was the making of her. Each time your life gets tipped over, you will come out stronger. You'll come out on the other side with new strengths, new abilities to deal with life in a constructive and dynamic way. I remember many years ago, before I learned about this, when these things would happen, I just would feel so victimized. I would feel like I'd been so wronged. And yes, maybe the behavior that has gone on around me, I can have all kinds of judgments about. But ultimately, if I play it right, all of it can be used for my spiritual growth. And yes, sometimes you have to act. Sometimes you shouldn't be a doormat or a victim. Sometimes you may even act drastically, but it's not from the personality self. It's not from that ego that's trying to assert its rights or its self justification. And what comes out of this is a deepening of your experience of yourself. That wisdom that you have within you has to be revealed. And haven't you noticed that the wisest people in your world, those people who have gone through some difficult times, the people who are going through successful recovery, the people who've dealt with tragedies or difficulties in their life. And what we're talking about here is resilience, and even more than resilience, it's not just bouncing back, but it's learning from and developing new skills and accessing those deeper parts of ourselves that can then come forward. And I think about situations in my life many years ago that I was rocked by and I felt I could barely handle or couldn't handle. And as the years went on, I might have more difficult experiences come up, but they didn't rock me as much. I was able to bounce back faster and reach deep within my being to come up with those solutions to those personal problems by not taking it personally. Every time you have a change in your life and you use that change for your advantage, you make spiritual progress. Every time there's a change in your life and you find it very difficult, but you journal it out and you find out the insight that you need to see, you find that you're not the same person. I just recently had something I had to return. It was some electronic equipment that was very carefully packed. And I found that when I tried to get it back into the box, I couldn't get it back in the box. When you go through your spiritual growth, you can't get things back into the old box. You have changes within yourself and you've expanded. So you actually find yourself growing past those old limitations. And you'll never have to go back into that old boring consciousness that kept you so stuck, that kept you so limited, that was stuck in complacency, that part of me that was shallow and wanted to be comfortable all the time, instead of that part of me that was that had hard-won wisdom that came out of the overcomings in life. As we look around us in this world, we notice so many people feel entitled, and we feel entitled sometimes. But when you go through some of these situations and you journal them out, when you use your observer self, you find that there is hidden depth within your being. People have had to struggle to overcome a deficiency, find that they have new abilities to face life. People who've had near-death experiences, as difficult as it may be to go through an experience like that, they've done studies on them psychologically, and they're much healthier people. So as we're on this journey together, we're rising up, become stronger and more determined by using our observer self to observe those changes and to handle them in a different way. And it's how you handle those changes in life, not what changes happen to you, that determines the quality of your life and the quality, most of all, of your spiritual growth. Spiritual growth is not about having a bliss experience all the time or singing kumbaya or being complacent. It's about building up that inner muscle, that spiritual strength within you. And you have resources within you that you don't even know about. And you will never find out until you exercise your observer self in the face of change. So ask for the help that you need. When you're going through one of these things, it's easy to feel overcome. It's just too much. I'm overwhelmed by this whole situation. Instead, ask for the help that you need to get through that situation and embrace that change instead of being afraid of it. Sometimes it's important to rearrange the furniture of your life so that you have a new configuration that serves you better, to get out of your comfort zone. And it is a cosmic law that you've got to let go of the old in order to embrace the new. The new energy, the new life, the new vibration cannot come in as long as you're holding on to these old things. So make room in your life. One way that I've exercised my observer self is every time I'm facing a major change in my life, I have always cleaned out my closets or cleaned out my garage or cleaned out old papers or old things. And I find that doing that physical act opens up that new energy, a space for that new energy to come into my life. Letting go of those old attachments and possessions and throwing them out and giving them away. And finding out that I don't need all those things actually gives permission to my subconscious to let go of those things that I'm holding in my subconscious mind. Your observer self will assist you in this process of spiritual growth, one step at a time. And in its highest and its ultimate expression, your observer self is that higher self of you, that infinite self, the Christ in you, the spiritual self. And as you take these spiritual steps, you'll let go of your limited idea of yourself as a limited ego, your limited idea of other people as detriments and difficulties in your life, and most of all, your limited idea of spirituality and God, of what love is, of what compassion is. And what you find is that as you let go of self-justification, self-righteousness. You find yourself that you've been wasting your energy on so many things that you don't need to spend your energy on anymore, and your life becomes more streamlined. It flows more effortlessly, and it becomes simpler. You move back from your life and you see it in a new and a better perspective. We have been allotted so much energy in our souls for this particular lifetime. And these are the gifts to our soul that we waste on this drama in life. In the video, Jane says, I had a whirlpool of emotions that wasted my energy. And the observer self, in journaling these feelings out and uncovering these strengths within us, will set us free, will open you up to a new aspect of your consciousness and support your spiritual growth. As you use your active observer, your observer self, you're going to find that you uncover old patterns that keep you stuck, but you're also going to find that you're uncovering new potentials and abilities that move you forward much faster and in a more grace-filled way. The first thing we look at in using the active observer is those emotional stuck places within us. And we find that we can become in control of situations and experiences that seem to be out of control, not by going out there and trying to control them, but by turning within and controlling the emotions and the reactions that we have about them. We've all had those situations when in the middle of the day that we wish that we were behaving differently or responding differently. But by observing our emotions, what we find is that we can observe that situation from our higher self and then give ourselves a little bit of time, a little bit of space to respond differently. And over time, what we find is that we depend on that observer self more and more in responding more appropriately in every situation and experience in life. But in working with the observer self, it requires us to be patient with ourselves, not expect us to do it all at once, but to take it a step at a time. Just remember that you're establishing a new pattern of dealing with yourself. And you make your commitment to do the work. You're vigilant every day to observe yourself, but you also recognize that this will take time. The more patient you are with yourself, the greater you'll experience the rewards of your observer self. So right now, right here, as you're sitting here, ask yourself, what can I do to exercise my observer self? And the first question is always, what am I feeling? Notice what you're feeling. Notice that as you're feeling it, there are beliefs and thoughts behind that feeling. And you just bring those up into your awareness. And as you ask for help, as you really desire your observer self, you ask for help, you find out that this tool, this observer self, supports you in your spiritual journey for enlightenment. So we're going to watch this video in a moment. And as we do, we're going to think about it. I'm going to ask you to keep these things in your mind as you're watching Jane talk about this. Recognize that you can make different choices in how to handle those life situations. And I want to share one last thing before we watch the video, that there are different layers and levels of using your observer self. Sometimes you just use your observer self on a surface level. You just watch your reactions and your thoughts, your feelings, and you let them arise and pass through you, and you let them go. Other times there's more Velcro there, and you've got to watch your reactions and make a new choice in what you're thinking or what your behavior is going to be, and step back and don't let those old patterns push you into making decisions or actions that are not for your highest good. So that's a deeper level of the observer self. And sometimes the deeper level of the observer self is still deeper. It's stopping the reaction and not allowing it to go any further in your consciousness. And that sometimes means doing the observer self journaling that's found in the Center for Enlightenment's spiritual power tools. It also sometimes means using your spiritual thermometer. And that's on page 43 in your spiritual power tools. And you can observe yourself using this spiritual thermometer. We're going to talk more about it next week. But get this chapter out and take a look at it. And if you don't have a copy of the book, download the book on the Center for Enlightenment website, cfenlightenment.org or centerforenlightenment.com, and just click right there. It says download the book, and you can turn to this page and run this off and clip it out and put it up on your mirror, and use this spiritual thermometer as a tool for observing yourself, to practice observing and see where you are during the day. And so now, as we watch this video together, let's be in our observer self and notice where we are in our thoughts and our feelings. Let's watch Jane talk to us about the observer self.
And know that you are in a play that you're acting in. That when I started to look at my life like that, it helped me to stand back and be more of an observer of myself. Because when we're involved in the process of life, we are overcome by the situations that come up daily. There's a lot of things that come into your life every day that you have to handle. And the hardest thing is our emotions when we're going through changes. You may have had a situation that started with losing a job or changing relationships, or perhaps some of the prayer requests I've had is loved ones that are in the hospital and the change that that's caused in their lives. And the change of just being alive and experiencing life on a new way of being and thinking. Because when you're on this journey that you're on, what happens is your consciousness starts to shake you loose of old belief systems, old ideas, even about God. My consciousness has shifted so many ways about thinking about the creator of this universe and not separating myself from that energy and that life, because that's part of who you are. That energy and life of God in you is striving to push you forward. And it sometimes changes your world by tipping it over. I've had my world tipped over so very many times. And every time I had it tipped over, I came out stronger, more capable of handling things, more wiser, more resilient, more determined. Because every time there's a change in your life and you grab hold of that change and you don't let it drag you down, it builds you up, it changes you. You can't be the same person, the same consciousness, and go through a death of a person in your life, an illness. Some of the illnesses that I had where I was on death's door, and I knew at the moment that the time that I was experiencing this terrific operation where they thought I was going to die, and I rose from that and got stronger and more determined on my spiritual journey. And you see, it's how you handle these changes that will support you. Your life is an adventure. Your life is an adventure of change. And this is the thing that so many of us are afraid of, change. Always I have to ask myself, when I'm in the avenue of change, I don't like giving up my comfort. We have comforts. We get comfortable in our space, comfortable in where we are. And it's hard for us to let go of our comfort zone. And scary to let go of it. But we have to let go of the old before the new can produce within you. We have to, because otherwise we're going to stay stuck in old thought patterns. Your movement in consciousness comes one little step at a time. And as we take these steps, we let go of the old concept that we had of what love is all about, what giving is all about, what emotional energy we spend trying to defend ourselves or justify ourselves. And when I could observe myself and how I defended myself when I didn't need to, just simply because I thought I had to, or because I had some idea within myself that I was right and they were wrong, I started to stand back and move back from this and started to see how foolish I was, how wasteful I was of my God energy, that I would be in this whirlpool, and I do mean a whirlpool of emotions that were grabbing me up and not helping me, not setting me free, not moving my consciousness, not doing anything to support my spiritual growth. So observing of self is so very important, because we uncover some of our old patterns, and our old patterns are what keep us stuck.
What I heard in that video was that the observer self is that spiritual muscle of the higher self that puts me in charge of my emotions, my thinking, and changes the quality of my life, because I can see the patterns that keep me stuck and get out of those patterns. And as you use your active observer in your everyday life, what you find is that you have your greatest opportunity for spiritual growth, more than going off on a mountaintop or going off on a meditation retreat, although those things are all wonderful. Your everyday life provides the opportunities, using your observer self, for your greatest spiritual growth. And I want to invite everybody to come on Thursday night. Thursday night, you can see it in the chat room. There's a little link there. It's also found on the website. Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern is the question and answer support group. And that's where like-minded souls can get together and share with each other what's going on, ask questions, and maybe just listen. You don't have to participate in any kind of active way, but it's a great boost during the midweek on Thursday nights at 7 Eastern, where you can get that support and share your journey and hear what other people are doing to give yourself strength and hope. It's also in the chat room and on the website that we have a link for donations for Center for Enlightenment. And your donations is how Center for Enlightenment continues. So we invite you to participate in Center for Enlightenment in this way. And we're going to take just a moment here. I'm going to close out with a meditation for activating the active observer, for asking for help and strengthening the active observer. And so taking the energy that is gathered here, whether we're watching it on the live stream or just watching a recording on YouTube, the energy's here. It's right here to support you. So take this energy in, gather this energy in, and accept your spiritual journey as a journey of support, a journey where the active observer assists you in letting go of those sticky places, what Jane calls sticky, gluey places within your subconscious, and replacing them with the flow of spiritual light and energy and support. And in this moment of silence, silently commit to using your observer self and even ask for support in a greater awareness, strengthening your connection with your infinite self using your observer self as we move into the silence. And as we bring ourselves back to the presence of our room with a new commitment to witnessing what's really going on and using it with our observer self to move forward to a new dimension, a dynamic expression, the truth of our being. So it is. We bring ourselves back to the presence of the room. I'm aware of the chair that we're in and things that are going on around us, and taking our active observer, putting it in our backpack, and moving into the day with a little curiosity. Wonder what I'm going to see today, knowing that it's going to move me forward in a wonderful way. See you Thursday night or next Sunday. Bye for now.